Hello and welcome to the Creative Pursuit episode number 2. So my name's Oliver, I'm a designer and entrepreneur, and today I have with me a super talented guy called Tom Ludd. So Tom is the founder of the Designers League and he's also a full-time UI and UX designer for a company in Leeds. We talk a lot today about freelancing versus working in an agency and kind of against working in-house as well. So it's a really good episode. There's a lot of really cool stuff that Tom talks about and I'm just excited that you're here. So thank you for listening and hope you enjoy. Tom, you are officially the Creative Pursuit's first guest. So I really appreciate you coming down, man. I'm super stoked to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, it's honestly a pleasure to have you here. I know you're a super busy guy, so I really do appreciate you taking the time out to come chat to me. So why don't we start with what you've been up to for the last kind of year or so?
Okay, so originally from Lincoln, come back home quite often, but I'm currently living in Leeds. And right at the moment, I'm working as a UI UX designer at Hark, alongside doing the Designers League and the occasional freelancing.
Yeah,
so quite a lot. But it's been quite a year of changes, which we can definitely go into.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really cool. One thing that I really wanted to ask you about was the Designers League, because I don't think we got into it as much as we could have done when I first met up with you, but I think a lot of people would be interested to hear how that's grown so big, because it's now is it 17,000 followers?
Yeah, so I think we're at 17,600 and something. It's been organic growth, like really great organic growth. I think just the nature of groups that, people invite people in, something clicked for us. So just to put it into perspective, on the first year, it took like a whole year of me messaging like hundreds of people to break 1,000 people.
Yeah. And
to get through at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I guess the subsequent years it just kind of grew exponentially, and I think when we hit 10,000, it just something must have clicked, or there must be some kind of algorithm or something that made Facebook push it out more or recommend it more. The growth has just been just pretty big.
Yeah,
pretty big, more than I thought it would be. I'd actually just had a post this morning that said because it turned 4 years old. The community,
oh really?
On the 13th of January.
Okay.
And I just had a post this morning where I'd posted out about it 3 years ago saying, TDL is a year old. We're at 1,200 people. I can't believe it's grown so big. And I shared it on my story earlier, and I was like, wow. It's just kind of funny at how at that point I was like mind blown at how big it had grown. Mm-hmm. So it really shows that maybe in the next few years, I'm going to be looking back on 17,000 hopefully and thinking, wow, I thought this was a big deal. So
absolutely,
here's hoping.
Absolutely.
The growth's been great, and it's with a lot of help from several people who helped me run the group, all the admins, that they help make it happen. And I think just the people, people trying their best not to be a dick, kind of helps the group and has helped its success and growth.
Absolutely, I think. I think nowadays there's a lot of companies and a lot of businesses and even groups that will buy followers to make themselves or put themselves on a level which makes people think they have value. But I think in reality, when you have organic growth like that to 17,000, that's such a more tight-knit community, because you've got people who actually care about the stuff that you're writing, and you're not putting a fake persona out that you're bigger than you are. You're growing naturally, and I think that's a big thing. And I think that's amazing that it's grown so quickly and to such an extent.
It's I think one of the best things about it is the fact that it's probably one of the last things on Facebook where you're not having to pay for reach. I think that really has been a testament to why it's grown. Do I believe that the community would be as big as it is without being on Facebook? And no. I think it being on the group, friends adding their friends.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, I think I've spent about £10 on Instagram ads
That's
before. Terrible ROI on that because I didn't know what I was doing. But I think just people adding, it's the best way because you're going to get the best quality people. And that really has just been the way it's grown. And there's a lot of groups that are seeing great growth, and people are realizing that Facebook groups is it's the forum of kind of this decade. Really, it's taken place of what that is. And people enjoy being in communities like that where they're kind of closed off communities like Reddit, and then the Facebook example. Groups. People really enjoy that kind of stuff. So, it's been great. I can't really put my hands up to it growing. It's been the members. They generate 99% of the content.
But I mean, in the same breath, you created the community, and you've created the place for people to share such meaningful content, and that's a huge thing. And it kind of brings me on to something I wanted to discuss, which is where the whole vision for it came from. Where did the idea spark? Was it just a random thought to pursue, or was it as a result of something happening? What's the story behind it?
It's quite sad to admit, but I had a brief stint at university in London, London College of Communication. I was there for about 3 months, then decided university wasn't for me. Immediately from leaving university, I lost that peer group. So I went from being in London, being around thousands of other people at the university, having people on my course, and having that network, get slashed straight away when I realised I was coming back home to be freelance to work alone. So I went from being around people to being incredibly lonely, and that kind of sparked the idea in my head. And I remember, because I've still got the sketchbook. Still got the sketchbook to this day, where I was watching a Skillshare video.
Okay. And
it was Aaron Draplin doing a tutorial for building crests, and I was just learning it because I was bored on the train, and I was drawing out this crest, and I was like, what am I going to name it? Because in the Skillshare it was like, use your family name, but I was like, that's boring. So I then started messing around, putting in. So a little tidbit here as well. The Designers League started out as the Designers Guild.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
So TDG doesn't quite roll off the tongue as much, does it? It started out its life as the Designers Guild, and I'd basically started scribbling away at this crest, and I was thinking, actually, because I was part of a couple of Facebook groups, and I was like, this is really cool. I was thinking, why don't I build up a small group and add my friends from university, so I can keep in touch with them, and I can throw my work to them and see, and get their feedback. I'd already been on sites like Dribbble and Behance, and that's great, but I don't think you foster as much of a connection, because it really is a bit of a circle jerk, really, in terms of, look at my work, give it likes. And I found I wasn't really getting the feedback that I wanted. People weren't spending enough time. They were just linking to their own work, which, that's what's to be expected with those sites. And also there was times where I couldn't necessarily put clients' work publicly. I couldn't necessarily just publish something and get the feedback I wanted, because a lot of the time it was work in progress. In the first 24 hours, I'd added about 50 or so of my friends, and then my friends added their friends, and so forth, and I think we hit over some like 140 members in the first 24 hours, which was kind of the spur I needed for it to grow. And I was like, oh damn, this is something worth exploring. And really, I never set out with the vision that I have of it that I have of Designers League now, it was purely an accident, but probably the best accident I've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's kind of its origin story. It was basically it was born out of me being pathetically lonely and wanting to connect with my peers when being in a small city like Lincoln, where there isn't as many creatives around.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really cool. It's, in fact, it's very similar to the whole concept for the co-creative that myself and my business partner set up like a year and a half ago now. So for anyone who doesn't know, the co-creative is essentially a co-working space for creative entrepreneurs, creative individuals, creative businesses. And it's kind of an open plan office space where lots of businesses can share ideas, collaborate, and then help each other out. I think that it's a really positive thing that stuff like the Designers League is taking shape, because that has such an opportunity to scale. You can grow that huge, like as you already have done. And the more groups and communities in whatever industry there are, the better for that industry it is. And the more people talk, the more people collaborate, the more products we'll get, the more innovation we'll see. And I think growing and creating these communities can only be a good thing, particularly in the creative industry. Collaboration is a huge thing. You have an idea, you bounce it off someone, and suddenly that idea snowballs into something so much bigger than something you could have come up with yourself. And having these communities, having these groups where people can share ideas and collaborate is a hugely positive thing.
I'm sure you feel this, but it's very fulfilling, kind of putting your time into helping guide people or facilitate the guidance of other people. And it's very much driven me to pour a lot of my time into it, because if I was to go through the years, we're only just now at a point where we're starting to monetize, and I'm starting to treat it like a proper business. I've spent countless hours. Everyone, so many people that have touched it have spent so much of their time just guiding others and helping people.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And I totally wish I'd had something. I had access to, that level of support when I was starting out in design.
Yeah.
So I just think it's amazing that there are some people like this. I haven't seen him post in a little while, but there was a guy called Ted in the group, and he's like maybe 16 now. I'm not sure, 16 or 17, but I know for a fact when he started in the group, he was about 15, 16. I could have his age way off here. He could be even younger. But either way, he does calligraphy, and the skill he has at his age, there's people that it's just unbelievable. You know, to when he, I'm 24, so I only know that when he hits my age, he's gonna be so. He's gonna be killing it. He's gonna be the top of his game. So it's just amazing to see people starting so young.
Yeah, absolutely.
People be so driven. So yeah, it's great.
I think that essentially the internet has allowed people to do that as well. It's allowed people to start just businesses earlier, finding what they're passionate about earlier, and really the university of YouTube has changed the world in terms of people having access to resources and content, and like places like the Designers League, where people can go and learn from more experienced people, learn from others, and like you say, even from a young age, and that's pretty special.
Oh, I mean, to give you some insight, I really royally messed up my education. I came out with very little to no qualifications. I think I had my C in English, but everything else was an absolute write-off. And I owe basically every skill I have and all the knowledge I currently possess about everything in design and tech and all that to the internet. The internet truly has been what has advanced me. You know, being in a small city like Lincoln, you have to get creative. You have to push. You know, every opportunity that's kind of been afforded me has come from, you know, me actually going on the internet, trying to figure things out. And it's just amazing. There's a stupid amount of opportunity for people. If you know where to go, and if you have the willingness, I truly, you know, I think it is funny, and I always watch people like Gary Vee and stuff like that, and he's so right when he's saying about how I think it was him who said it, but millennials, I guess, you know, everyone's focusing on, you know, that maybe houses are harder to buy. You know, you can't get houses for less than £100,000. It's generation rent. You know, all these kind of things, and that maybe the opportunity to do those kind of financial things are harder. But I tell you what, I wouldn't be able to do anything if I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. If the internet hadn't been around. I truly think we've got the most opportunity than any previous generation has ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit it bang on there. This is such an amazing time to be able to grow and to be able to go into any career you could possibly want. You know, really, you can go on the internet and you can learn anything. You can learn how to be a graphic designer. You can learn how to build websites. You can learn how to do DIY. You can learn how to repair your car. You can literally use it to do anything. And you know, if you're passionate about something and maybe you haven't gone to university to study it, if you can utilize, you know, your spare time effectively and start learning something new and put your all into it, you can change your career because of the internet, which is insane. And that's what I think I love about it, the opportunity that there is as a result of it.
I mean, I think people are starting to catch on that it's becoming more and more apparent that, you know, remote working is going to be a big thing. If we look at, you know, I'm sure if we look at a comparison from 10 years ago to now, so many more companies by standard are offering remote working.
Absolutely.
For example, Hark, like we take all our equipment, you know, we do have a physical office, but we all take our equipment back, because if, for example, we just want to work from home, that's an option. And I think more and more people are realizing the benefits of working remotely, and businesses are going to have the benefits as well. Absolutely. Because it's less overhead. You're going to have happier workers because they're able to actually get the stuff done that they need in life, and they're not spending all the time commuting. Again, and I think it is quite apparent for a lot of companies as well that, you know, if you're only hiring based on locality, you're going to miss out on a lot of talent. And so I think it is shifting more to digital, and people will be forced to be more digital savvy, you know, as more and more, for example, you know, even like with basically every industry, you know, building, kitchens, every profession is going to have automation at some point, so that it is going to have to push people to be more to focus on, you know, higher skilled things, because repetitive labor is going to be something. I can't say when, but everyone knows that if it can be done, it probably will be done, because there's a lot of money to save. And it frees us up to be doing the more important things, like, I don't know, saving the planet. So I think digital really is the future, you know, which is a silly like, we all know it. It's just, I think it's going to come a lot quicker than we all think. I'm excited. I love it. So I'm sure, you know, we both remember like dial-up and stuff like that, and how crap, how bad internet was.
Absolutely.
So I'm super stoked for it.
I think there's a lot of changes on the horizon. A lot of things that are happening and are changing the world. Slack is a perfect example. I mean,
love it.
That's the most efficient work tool, and that kicked off like 4 or 5 years ago,
something like that. Do you know the Slack origin story? Do you know about how it came to be?
I don't.
So it's funnily enough, the founder, Stuart Butterfield, I think. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. We can edit it otherwise. But he and his team were building a game, like an online game, and they built like an IRC chat.
Yes,
so
that's
like,
right.
or they built some kind of chat system to manage their kind of their work. And as they were kind of shelving the product that was the game, they were like, oh, we've got this system that works quite well. So again, it's one of these accidents that happen.
So just for the benefit of anyone who hasn't heard of Slack or doesn't know what it is, essentially it's a messaging system which is used internally by businesses, and it's basically it allows you to collaborate and speak to members of a business internally much easier than by email, because it allows you to look back through messages quicker and easier. You can share photos and videos. You can create whole threads for individual departments or topics, and it's just a super useful tool. Really nice user flow. You can search back through messages. You can pinpoint individuals and send them private messages, and it's just a really useful tool if you're in a business or in a startup community. So if you have a startup, or if you're in a business and you don't use Slack, maybe suggest it or recommend it, because it is extremely useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that something, and they've stood up against countless copycats.
Absolutely.
And it just amazes me. Like I don't know about you, but I'm always on like product hunt, like looking whatever, software is coming out, whatever tech, whatever products, and just experimenting constantly. Always come back to Slack. I've tried Workplace by Facebook. I've tried Stride by Atlassian, which is, Atlassian actually even shelved and was like, we can't do it better than with Slack. We're teaming up with Slack. I've tried. So we also use Microsoft Teams at Hark.
Okay.
Because we use a lot of Microsoft products there, so it makes sense, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Do I think it stands up to Slack? No. The integrations, the admin team at TDL use it. It's so handy using a combination of that and Trello.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Several other things.
Yeah.
Productivity. I love it.
Absolutely. I think as well, when you're part of different businesses, and maybe so like myself, I'm obviously with the co-creative, and then I've got Tended on there, and then we've got a channel, but it's like the ability to just switch between the channels so easily and be straight into a completely different business with a load of different channels and a load of different content, I think is extremely useful, extremely good user flow as well.
Yeah, I mean it's beautifully simple, isn't it? If you've got a topic, create a channel. Yeah. And then instead of using a linear chat for several different subjects, which I've tried doing with the admins before, and when there's several of you and you're trying to talk about something and then someone else feeds something in, it disrupts the flow of that conversation. And the trouble is, it's not great for people that are in multiple time zones, because they're going to probably see the messages at different times, either when they wake up or, for whatever reason. And Slack has been amazing for that, because using a combination of the channels and threads, you are able to clearly lay out what's been going on, and it not be a linear chat that you have to scroll up through, because things get missed.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, I love it. I love Slack.
The ability to search back through conversations as well is extremely useful. Extremely useful tools.
It's just I mean, I think it's one of the first apps I download whenever I get a new system or a new phone.
So we've touched on the fact that you're now at Hark.
Yes,
which is cool. How are you finding it? You enjoying it?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, carry.
No. I was just gonna say. So, obviously, you had your stint in freelancing.
Yes.
And I kind of just wondered how you felt that compared to being in an agency or being in a full-time position, as opposed to kind of having to go out and find the clients yourselves and being in that freelance role.
So I've now kind of gone full circle with everything. So like I've done freelancing, I've done working at an agency and also agencies even, and also now in house, and that's really great because I can see the pros and cons of all sides. But for me, it's been something where I've just gone with whichever direction or whichever pathway has complemented my kind of life situation at the time. When I was living back here in Lincoln, I was able to be full-time self-employed and not worry too much because I had admittedly the support of family, and that really allowed me to focus just on doing the best work I can do instead of scrambling around and having to take work that may not be beneficial and where I'm possibly undervalued and I'm not working on stuff that would really, I suppose, find me further work. It'd be like bits of print here and there, flyers, stuff like that. Really like, and that's not to put a downer on that because at the end of the day, it's all got to be done. Yeah. But there's a reason why most designers don't put a lot of that kind of collateral on their portfolios. It's because people will hire you for the exciting things that you do.
Yeah,
the things that you don't often get a lot of opportunity to do unless you're really well known. So it really allowed me to work on more ambitious things like the Designers League. So when I moved to Leeds, I moved to join an agency. And I was there for 6 months, so not long by any standard at all, but long enough for me to realise it wasn't necessarily the path I wanted to go down because when working at an agency, and especially when you're kind of, I suppose, at the bottom there, you really do have to put in 110% effort. And I definitely implore people to join agencies and do that kind of work if they're wanting to put their all into it. Yeah. Because I think you will be rewarded by the late nights that you stay there, all the time and loyalty that you show. You have to work in overdrive because when you're joining at a junior level, I don't think you are going to be very profitable for the agency for a while until you get used to working to their schedules and their routines. And when you consider everything, I get oftentimes when agency work can be quite demanding because you are really the product in the sense of their agencies are selling the creative's time. So it's one of those things, like, of course people are going to stretch you as far as you can go to try and make it profitable because you are, and not in a demeaning way, but you are one of the tools of the business to help make the business grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I realised that, and I knew that, I was working about a day extra, unpaid overtime, which I'm not sour about that. It was just one of those things that I understand. I think it's one of those things that people do often find they face. And you often, when you are doing skilled work like that and stuff that is very time contingent, you need to you kind of need to allow for a bit of flexibility in that. People want to put effort into something they love.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's great. And for me, I've never just been someone where I just want to be a designer. I don't see myself as just designer. I see myself as kind of a designer and maker, whether it's making an idea. I've never wanted to just purely be a designer at an agency or at a job. I always want to be creating things on the side. I always want to be building something because that's really what gets me passionate. So right off the bat, I kind of knew long term, I was only ever going to be able to put so much kind of my time and attention into the agency, else things like Designers League could fall. Like that wouldn't be able to grow as much because I'd be getting burnt out all the time. But then I also realised at the other end that if I'm doing, there was times where I was sat doing TDL stuff in my lunch break. I remember building parts of the site when I was on my hour's lunch break at the agency. And when you're doing stuff like that, I became quite aware that I wasn't putting in, I guess, all the time and effort that I necessarily should be for the agency. For me, it just meant that I kind of knew that I needed to make a change, which made me segue into being self-employed and trying to attempt that. And then again, I realised with that trying to freelance, and where you're having to do a lot more work because the clients aren't, all the organisation of the project and the project management falls upon you. All the communications between the client and yourself falls upon you. Chasing them for the bills, trying to find new clients, all falls upon you.
Yeah.
And then actually when you do all of that and get around to the tiny bit that is actually doing the creative work, it's such a demanding thing. And again, people will be really successful, I think, in freelancing and stuff like that. And there's so many people in TDL that I know that focus their attention on freelancing and make great returns.
Yeah.
But for me, I knew that trying to build startup ideas like the Designers League and freelancing as well to pay the bills, again, was really hard.
Yeah.
Which led me to segue into going in-house.
I see.
Which, it seems a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rewards with that as well. I'm really enjoying where I'm at the moment.
That's great.
Great people.
So something that I've kind of wondered about, and I'm speaking from the outside here because I've never worked for an agency. But one thing which I've kind of observed and kind of heard on the grapevine is that it's potentially less creative. Maybe that's because, with these high ticket clients, there's a lot more rules and regulations in regards to what you can do creatively and what their kind of brand guidelines allow for. And maybe the fact that because you're under these time pressures and strict deadlines, like you say, there's not that opportunity to explore an idea more, than you maybe could if you were freelancing or if you're in-house, where you have, generally speaking, I guess, a lot more time. Is that something that you've experienced? Do you think it is less creative? Does it depend on the agency, or, what's your experience with that?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? I think it's creativity, but in a different sense, in the sense of when I was working at agencies, I was like thrown about all over the place in terms of projects. So variance is amazing. And that is great. But you'd often find that you don't necessarily have the time that you want to spend to do something.
Yeah.
And it really was dependent on how much the client was paying, how much time was allotted for you, whether you could really be exploring something to its fullest potential. There'd be other times where maybe I was only given a couple of hours to attack something. And then, it then becomes one of these things of how do I just get the best result out in that time, which in my opinion isn't really the best way to go about things, because you should never be trying to just beat the clock on something. You want to be thinking, what is the best possible result I can gain from this that will, project a business forward. Certainly in my experience, my last experience of being in an agency, my time was divided up like to the hour, often because the time was billable per hour. And it might be that on one day I switch between 5 different things. So then I've got to kind of make sure that I achieve whatever that set objective for that time is, whether it's to make a client amend, or whether it's to I don't know, get a first concept out for something in that period of time. And if you go over it, then everything else gets put behind. So there is a lot of pressure, and in some ways there were times where the pressure was really good, but then there's other times where if you're having an off day, then that can't be great. you know, sometimes pressure can, you know, produce some great outcomes.
Yeah.
But other times it, you know, it can really hinder the creative process. And I know for a fact there were certain outcomes that I'd got to where I knew that if I'd spent a bit more time exploring, I probably could have got something a lot better. So I think it's one of those things, and I think you've got to learn to not be too precious when working in an agency, because there is practically no ownership of the work, in the sense of you will, you know, there will be a project, there will be several designers on it, most likely. Whatever input you have may be tossed away at any point. You know, you may do something and then someone else takes it over and completely changes what that concept was. And again, I'm sure some agencies work differently. They all work differently, and just in my experience, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I just knew at the end of the day, business is business. But in my opinion, I think it hindered my creativity in areas, for sure. I don't know. I think everyone works a bit differently, and I would never want to dissuade someone from working at an agency, because I truly think you have to try it all, and see which you know fits your kind of working style the best. Some people would probably hate to work in-house on a single product, you know, and they love the variants. Other people would really like to work you know, in-house at a startup, at a software company, you know, designing the UI and the UX and stuff like that, and they'd love the ownership they have from start to finish. And I think there are pros and cons, but I think everyone just needs to try. You know, if you feel like you should try it, definitely give it a try, and you'll figure out for yourself whether you've got whether you like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one of the big advantages and potentially one of the biggest of working for an agency is the chance to almost shortcut and skip over to the big clients. You can skip straight into working for Airbnb. You might be put straight into project work for Airbnb, or I don't know, Jaguar or whoever, and it's a chance to skip having to make all the leaflets and skip having to do the mind-numbing work and be able to work with these big global clients, which will look impressive should you apply for another job, or if you want to put it on your portfolio. That's quite a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that. I mean, there was definitely times in the agency where I was doing retainer work for, you know, smaller businesses, where it was really, I suppose, you know, there was a lot of repetitive stuff like print work, you know, making amends to InDesign files, you know, little typos here and there, getting things print ready. But then you know, and actually, funnily enough, I think a lot of the time when I was working on some of the bigger client stuff, I was probably doing some of the most boring stuff, because there are so many rules. It really depends. Like, this is a funny one, because sometimes people ask who would you like to work with the most, and I wouldn't really want to work with Nike or with Coca-Cola at all. Like, I think the most exciting thing I could do is probably join, you know, head up design maybe for a promising startup, and really be able to kind of craft who they are, and really be able to build that story and be behind that. I think there's nothing. I think there's nothing more exciting than, for example, think of the original team that built up Slack and the design product agency MetaLab, who designed the look and feel of Slack. You know, seeing, you know, what they saw, knowing that, you know, or not knowing how big Slack was going to be, to seeing it being, you know, basically a household name. For anyone in the professional industries. And to me, that seems like the most rewarding stuff you can do. So I think it's taking the chance on these, you know, these little ideas that could one day be big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a special thing where when you can kind of take ownership of a brand, or take ownership of a product and the art direction of that. And like you say, if it one day becomes big, to think that a logo you designed potentially, or some UX work you did is now influencing thousands or millions of people around the world. I think that's a really awesome thing.
Like for example, like because someone swipes in a certain way, it's because you thought about it that time.
Exactly.
And now other apps have followed suit.
Yeah.
And now, that I think that's just, I think you've got the opportunity to do something really big.
Yeah.
By taking chances on things when they're small. And that I think it's the excitement, and that's why I love building stuff, because I love building upon the potential of something that could be vastly more scalable than I could imagine it to be. Yeah. I guess.
I think being in the startup industry now for a few years, I really, particularly for the next 10 years or so, I really can't imagine being out of the startup industry. It's so exciting. It's so fast paced. Things change all the time. There's new briefs and new directions we want to go in, and that is it's an incredibly exciting thing. And I suppose like you're saying about the agency work, where you're so restricted by big clients, and you're so kind of tied to a brief, you kind of lack that creativity, and that's something which I've certainly found has been incredibly fulfilling working at startups. Just being able to have that creative freedom and the creative autonomy to take something in the direction that you think is best.
Yeah, I mean, just wearing many hats. I think.
Yeah.
For example, at Hark at the moment, we're doing a ton of stuff, and I've joined as their first designer, so it's really exciting for me, because I'm going to be able to lay down the groundwork for what will hopefully, as the business grows, will influence, the next designers that come.
Yeah.
And as the team grows, it's going to change things, so I'm really excited about it. And I think that's like a massive thing, and it's just an exciting space to be in. Just like the other day, like I stopped doing design to because we took in a product delivery.
Okay.
So, I spent a couple of hours just shifting boxes, and I was thinking, I never imagined I'd be doing that, but at the same time, I was in, it's just one of those things. It's fun. I like the unpredictability of it. I just love that there, at least in my experience, there's no egos. Everyone's just trying to work together. Everyone's, it's like a family. And I think you see some of the most passionate people in startups, because everyone's kind of come from maybe their comfortable jobs as developers or designers to work on this idea that's quite small. That everyone is there because they want to make a difference to it, and that's something that you seldom often see in a big multinational with 50,000 employees.
Absolutely. In a job like that, you have the security, whereas startup, it's very much what you're contributing is making a big difference. So naturally, the people that are working there are wanting to make the big difference and are wanting to give it their all. And like you say, I think that's why it feels like a family, and why it feels so special working in these small startups in these industries. And I think it's incredibly exciting. I think the startup industry, it's kind of over the last, I guess, 5 to 8 years is where it's really taken off, and we've seen thousands and thousands of businesses created every year now, and there's so many startups, and it means that there's so much opportunity for people and anybody that's listening, that there is opportunity to go and make a difference at these smaller companies that are building new and innovative things. And you don't have to just stick with the tried and tested job at wherever just because it's been established for a long time. You can go and you can really make a difference. And that is amazing. Discuss some awesome topics there.
Yeah, no, I could talk all day about it all.
Honestly, I think I don't know what the limit is for Spotify audio. Whether you can have a 10-hour long podcast.
This would have to be like a 10-part series, wouldn't it? Really?
Maybe that's something we should consider.
Yeah, for sure. No. Well, thank you very much. I forgot to say, I got you a little gift. I think.
You really got me a gift.
I did. Got your little TDL pin badge.
Do you know what? I saw it on your denim jacket, and I thought that is really cool. I need to get one. So thank you so much for that. That is awesome.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure.
Show the camera. There we go. Look at
little plug.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's awesome. No, thank you so much for coming down. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and being the first guest.
Thank you. No, it really is a pleasure, and thank you
very much.